think humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever. The demand will be insatiable.
You said that
everyone's going to want one. It's like basically who wouldn't want their own personal C-3PO R2-D2?
No,
everyone's going to want one.
You've said that, and your goal. You've also said is to produce 1 million robots. I think by 2030. That's what I had you on the record as saying.
I think that's a reasonable target.
And then start towards sustainable abundance, which you can get into. But I wonder. We've been talking about autonomous and how long it takes to train the automobile to be able to be the equivalent of or exceed human capabilities. But what about these robots? To the extent that how much training are they going to need to actually be able to do various different types of tasks? Isn't that something that's going to take a long time? Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of compute resources, and it'll take time. I think there's certain threshold breakthroughs that we think we can achieve, where if Optimus can watch videos, YouTube videos or how-to videos or whatever, and based on that video, just like a human can, learn how to do that thing, then you really have task extensibility that is dramatic. Then it can learn anything very quickly. So I think we'll get there in the next.
We're not there yet, though.
We're not there yet.
You're relying on a significant uptick in terms of learning and training.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm calling it a very significant threshold. Would be the ability to learn from watching a video.
Right.
But at the point
as opposed to watching a human, right? Or having a human sort of train it right now with a task.
I mean, right now we're training Optimus to do like primitive tasks where a human in a kind of what's called a mocap suit is and sort of cameras on the head is moving in the way that the robot would move to, say, pick up an object or open a door, or the basic tasks, throw a ball, dance, and we need to I think that's needed to sort of bootstrap the intelligence so you can have the basic functions. Then where I think it gets very interesting and very much like humans is that you want the robot to self-play. Right. So you say, how does a child learn? Well, a child has toys, and a child plays with the toys, plays with the blocks, at some point figures out how to put the triangle in the triangle hole and the circle in the circle hole by doing it over and over again. And this self-play, once you have a lot of robots, you can do this self-play, which is that you just put the robot in a room with toys and have the robot literally have the robot play with toys.
And it will learn.
Yeah. And you have to have a reward function. Say like, okay, the goal of the robot is to put, that classic child's toy. You put the circle in the circle hole, the square in the square hole, triangle in the triangle hole, and keep doing it until it works.
Okay, so we've had a lot of things happening in the past 72 hours or so. I think it was just 3 days back that NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang was in Taipei, and he spoke about this massive tectonic shift, that this tsunami wave of technological transformation that's headed towards us in the global manufacturing scene, with digital factories and humanoid robotics. So now you have Elon Musk talking to CNBC and saying, humanoid bots are going to be the biggest product ever. I have Scott Walter and Gustav Anderson with me. Scott is a mechanical and aerospace engineer and a two-time founder of robotics companies. He's also a factory simulation expert. And again, we're going to, I imagine that's going to be something that hat that he's going to be wearing today again. And of course, Gustav is a hand surgeon from Northern Sweden. And it's always great to have both of you gentlemen with me here. This is our first live. Let's hope everything goes off well. So far, it's good. Let's quickly, so those are prophetic words from Jensen, followed up with this amazing insight from Elon. And then just a few hours back, this is what he posted on X. And let me just play this out for you. Okay, so a lot to take away from that. What a stunning breakthrough. I don't think we've quite seen. I mean, we've done a lot of speculation, right, Scott and Gustav here on Over the Horizon about, sim to real and reinforced learning and how we've talked about teleoperation, but this is kind of all bringing everything together, right, Scott?
Yes. And I think this is the first time where you've sort of seen Elon talk about something that might happen in the future. And then like 24 hours later, them started doing something. But what I wanted to be very clear is that the breakthrough that Elon is talking about is not the breakthrough that's here. Again, he's talking about kind of bootstrapping. This is laying the foundation, and that they've already laid one layer of bricks, and this is one more layer of brick that's going up there. And pretty much what Elon is describing, it was already predicted 40 years ago in one of my favorite science fiction movies called Short Circuit, when Johnny Five, who was a humanoid, basically learned just from watching TV. Remember, so that ultimately that's the way that we would want to go through this, is because there's already a lot of training data out there for many things. But again, you have to have a certain foundational level for you to understand what's in those videos, and they're taking that first step. And so there may seem to be a kind of incongruency between, when them talking about kind of this breakthrough in there and what Elon was talking about, and also what his team has been kind of hinting at over the past month or so with some of the things that we're seeing. So what you want to do is you kind of lay out everything that's going on there for the understanding that this is not exactly what he's talking about. He still knows it's going to be ways to get there, but it's a very important first step, and we can explain a little bit on why it's so difficult.
So it's partly, I guess, the video training that they're demonstrating, but they also write down like topics, like brush the breadcrumbs. So that is not actually just trained from a few videos, if I understand correctly. So they learn the maneuvers, but the large language model is the one that actually tells the robot what to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't expect them to write those titles down. So it's not just, now it's going to do the steering of the pot, push enter, but rather they give him the command and it knows.
Right. And I'm pretty sure they learned stirring the pot from Elon, because that's something he's pretty good at. But if you kind of look at what's going on there, is that I don't think it's voice actuated yet. They're probably typing in, because this is an approach that just about everyone else has been doing as well, because there's precision in typing those things in, whereas you don't want to give an instruction that goes, there may be some speech to text, but for the most part, they're over there typing these things in, so they really log everything correctly as they're going through it. We've seen this already going back to, I think, a project that Google DeepMind showed about 2 years ago, and then they showed integration of that. I think Agility also showed something like that. You might see the famous thing where they asked Agility to pick up the box that was the color of Darth Vader's light sword, just again using an LM to do that. Figures also shown something like that. So that capability has been out there. It's just sort of melding everything together with this. Now, Elon talked about that early on, that you're building the foundation of what sort of the reflexive actions are, of what it can do, that had to be done with some sort of motion capture suit, which either was an exoskeleton, or in many cases, I think it was just like, VR setup like you would have for most gamers, or just a handset going around where you're trying to get the actual coordinate positions. And now that they have enough of that, they can kind of say, well, we know how to kind of do motion capture without all the fancy apparatus. There's a lot of camera systems that can do that. And I think everyone's seen, all you have to go back is, remember how you used to play video games with the Wii controller and stuff like that? And suddenly Microsoft came out with the Kinects, and that was just a camera looking at what you were doing, and you could suddenly get the motion like that. So that kind of motion capture technology has been around a lot. You'll see plenty of examples on the internet of people already doing that with robots, with hands, for example. You see a lot of these things are grabbing the positions of the hand, and then you can see another hand that's moving there. So that's kind of feasible. You don't have to suit it up. And what they're doing is they're going to what's called like a first person point of view. So just putting on some glasses or something like that will have a video in there, you can sort of see what's going on, and then you can begin to figure out, well, exactly where is the human's hand position, and maybe use it. Now, what's a little bit different, and there's some posts that are interesting to go through from the team. I mean, it's almost more interesting to look at what they're saying, where they sort of say that it was easy before you had the robot in the loop. So when you're doing the motion capture, basically the robot was actually grabbing the bottle, and you were kind of getting a little bit of feedback from that. You were seeing it, were studying it, you were able to capture what was going on. Now all of a sudden there's like basically a huge time delay between it. You're capturing the data, and then later on trying to figure out how to get the robot to do it. And it's I think something that Jensen was talking about, this idea of like reel to reel,
right.
That you're capturing it here, and there's a step in between, and the question is where that step in between is going to be sim, where you go real to simulation, and then from there to real, or whether eventually you get it like you're literally talking about real to real. At that point, we show it and it does something, and there's really no simulation. It's just a transformation.
I think
and
it's similar to. Similar to the training of the autopilot as well. I mean, that's just looking at videos. They're not actually following how the steering's going, just looking at how.
And you know what the video is doing is the video is sort of auto labeling everything. So it's building semantics. So when it's going down the road, it's just not saying these are a bunch of pixels. Hey, there's a fire hydrant over there. There's a human. There's a bicyclist and stuff like that. So it's able to identify all those things. So it's like that they're doing the same thing. Is that they're looking at a scenery and identifying all the furniture that's in there, all the different objects. Where they are, figuring out the locations, because you can do that with video, that as you're streaming it in and moving, you get enough stereo that you can begin to figure out where the locations of these things are. And that's why it's an important big step.
Yeah, and just very quickly before we get on to Milan and Ashish and their posts, Gustav, something struck out at me when I listened to Elon talk about how robots learn, and he said it's almost like a child, when a child plays with toys, and the child learns to put the triangular block in the triangle hole and the circular block in the circular hole, and then that kind of becomes a database for the human brain in that child as that data set keeps expanding. The more connections in that data set, the more inferences that the human child can draw from that, builds onto the capability for zero-shot learning.
Right.
And we're seeing zero-shot learning emerge in the first humanoids. We've seen that with Figure. How much are we seeing this, Scott and Gustav? Gustav, first from the biological parallels, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so what I'm guessing that at least humans and animals, they will have some kind of the feedback or the reward system is there, kind of in looking how we are trained to look at how our parents behave and what they are avoiding and stuff like that. So there we learn. But I'm guessing the humanoid will not have that innate in them. It would have to be told that this is the right thing to do. The robot, I presume, unless it's watching videos and learning that way, wouldn't know whether stacking the blocks is the right thing to do, or rather putting them next to each other. Whereas we have some kind of innate interest in putting blocks on top of each other, or learning to avoid the snake or whatever by looking at our relatives or parents. So and he mentions this rewarding system, but after a while you could probably just put them in a room and they are experiencing it together and playing and finding ways to.
And also a human child is also learning to calibrate his or her arms, right, and legs and the entire body, and that sort of calibration also has its parallels with humanoid bots in this learning process, doesn't it, Scott?
Absolutely.
We have innate. I mean, walking is kind of built into our system. We don't have to look at someone to learn how to walk. Kids will learn how to walk by themselves, more or less, even if you can motivate them and encourage them. But walking is kind of built into our reflexes from the get-go.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that what Elon was talking about is this idea of bootstrapping. So when a human child is born with an innate neural net that already has a certain number of functions that they're ready to do, and it's just a matter of exercising some of those things and developing some motor skills. And some of them are like in there, like, famously cats don't like cucumbers because it's like already wired in them. They don't have to see a snake. They just know that they don't like snakes. So we have a lot of those things. And there's this idea of genes and memes. We have the genes that give us a certain amount of thing, and the memes is a way of transferring information or data from one generation to another that's not in there. But we need that basic layer to be able to build these things onto. And they're not quite there yet. And once they get enough motor skills, they can start to do the play. And part of it will be also observing some other one or some other kid say, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm going to try to do that as well. Or an adult just giving like a little bit of a suggestion. And again, the rewards can be everything from here's a lollipop to a slap on the wrist. So it's like, no, we don't want you doing that. And what you got to remember is that right now, the bots are already using a system like that in a digital playground, which is where all the simulation is going on using RL. And the thing is, to build up that innate neural network, you need millions of robots, and we don't have enough of them, and we don't have that amount of time. So they're getting it up to a level, and what's going to happen is we're going to go away from digital RL to basically analog RL. Produce enough of these bots, and they have a big enough room, and give them enough toys, and let them have at it. And the beauty is that once one of those kids figures out how to stack the blocks, then bam, all of them do. Okay. And then you do the same thing. And once one of them learns to hit the baseball, they all learn how to play the baseball. It's like, and that's where you get that kind of really interesting scaling. It's not like you now have to go through and teach every one of them that particular skill. But you need to get to some threshold before that can happen, because you need millions of virtual bots, and it's going to be really hard to get millions of analog bots to do it. But if we're at a certain level, maybe you do it with 1,000 or 10,000, and then they can really start doing it, because then the physics will be perfect. They'll really know, like that stirring right there. It's like, okay, you can show that in a video, but it's something else to actually stir a real pot, to really feel what those things in there. So it's kind of a suggestion, begin with that, but you're going to have to go in there and actually do it yourself.
Yeah, that's an evolutionary advantage that humanoid bots with neural nets have over us humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. As you rightly said, one learns at the entire what is it?
Mm-hmm. The whole they don't have to practice. They get it. You know, you can show me a really good tennis stroke, and I'll learn that from you. That's kind of this meme that you're actually spreading knowledge to me and show it to me. But mine's going to be really bad unless I get out there and practice and practice and practice. Yeah. And of course, if I don't practice, I then atrophy and lose it, and then I've got to pick it up again. But these bots, once they get those skills, they all get it, and they all hold on to the skill.
Yeah. Except, of course, if you go from one generation to the next of the bot, and then you have to do a little bit of recalibration and a little bit of retraining and stimulation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be.
Sorry, Gustav.
No, just on a side note, there is actually this pseudoscience idea that there are some kind of interconnection. So there are observations of birds learning how to open a bottle in one part of the world, and then a few weeks later, another bird on the other side of the world does the same thing. So there was this pseudoscience idea that if something happens in nature, then it's easier for the next individual to do the same. But in this case, it will actually be
hang on. Are you telling me avian tweets are faster than human tweets?
Yeah, exactly. And then they saw this sheep on New Zealand. I think they kind of learned how to roll under their fence, and then a sheep in the UK did the same. So it's a whole science about this, but I don't hold to it. No, but I mean, I'm really looking forward to when the basic setup and the functionalities that they can really just watch a human doing something. So I'm guessing
a lot of that is already been done through motion capture, right, Scott? And we've seen. I mean, motion capture isn't something new. It's been around for a while in Hollywood and other movie production studios, where you have these humans with the suits, and then they have these little circular the dots, and then that's converted into graphics,
and that's kind of intrusive, but it's very precise to get everything you need for the motion for Hollywood. For a lot of what they're doing with the humanoids is they're using a much simpler thing, that you just get a handset that you're moving around or something else, because or in some cases they may add a few more trackers here and there. So it's a question of scalability, because to do that real precise motion capture, you usually have a special room with cameras and everything else, and the lighting has to be just right, and you're wearing a black suit, so you have the right contrast and everything to do that tracking. And that's a problem with scalability. It's not scalable.
No, and it's cheating. I mean, you will have multiple cameras looking at this individual, so you'll get a one-to-one representation in your computer, whereas I'd rather just have them look at someone walking down the street picking up something, and then they infer, okay, this is the motion I'm doing, with just one point of view looking at them.
Yes. And that's and that's for the trick, is like, it seems like, you know, it'd be a fairly simple thing to go from first person to third person view, which is what they would like to be able to do. You know, in many cases, I think what you're seeing here in the first person view is it's in the same lab. So they're showing a picture of stirring the same pot on the same stove with the same ladle and everything else. And then the bot kind of does it. So you don't really have, you know, a diverse data set there, because you got to start somewhere. And eventually it's going to be that you're going to show something in which the equipment, the apparatus, everything using is different. The environment is different, and it has to kind of generalize from that. But the starting point is to figure out, can it even learn from watching the videos that we're doing of this, of how to get ahead and do it. And then the third person, we know, is a little bit tricky. If anyone's ever tried to tie a tie on someone else, you can't do it standing in front of them. It's like, you got to come around the back and look at it and say, okay, this is it. Because it's, you know, the perspective is different. So you know how to tie it. It's just that you know how to tie it from that position. And so we're sometimes pretty bad at learning something without actually being right there, or like right next to someone to see it straight on, because that little transformation. Now, mathematically, it's not a hard transformation. It won't be very hard for the computers to do it. So I'm pretty sure that they would be able to do it, but you never know. You do these things and you think it's going to be really easy, and then it's much harder. And the reason why it's harder is that you're trying to learn something where you're not really seeing what's going on, and you're implying, you almost need to do like this diffusion model that you create the movie in your head of what it looks like. So if you've never had the experience of being in a kitchen and seeing a pot, and it's the first time, and you're seeing it from across the room, you don't know what that thing is. You don't know what's going on in there. You have no idea of inferring. But if you've sort of seen these things, eventually you might be able to fill in the gaps and say, oh, I see exactly what they're doing. Even if I can't see the backside of it, I'm pretty sure I know what it looks like.
And talking about this, not Oculus, but this old Kinect motion capture, there are very simple open source hand tracking systems that you can download. And it's very good at tracking your hand from the front, and will even give you angles of the joints. But as soon as your thumb kind of goes away from vision, it won't know where it is. It will like flicker around there. So you really need some kind of understanding of the anatomy and where would it go if it turns like this.
And that's a persistence model where, you know, again, that's what the self-driving has had to do, is that a lot of times pedestrians will disappear momentarily, and they have to come up with the persistence of sort of guessing, like, well, I know they're moving that way. I'm expecting them to show up. They should be there. And if at some point they're not there, then they're guessing, all right, maybe they really did go down the manhole cover or something like that. But it's the same thing with our anatomy, is that we know, if I do this to you right now, you know my thumb is hidden because you know I have a thumb. But if you knew nothing about human anatomy and it was like that, you'd be kind of surprised when I came around and say, well, what's that thing? I have never seen that before. So again, that comes from making sure you have a foundation, that you understand enough about the world. I mean, not just physics, but also kind of this sort of the objects you would typically see in the world.
Right. Okay.
And that's how, and by the way, that's how magicians get away with all their stuff, because we have certain expectations of how things should be, not realizing that what's behind the curtain and stuff like that is not exactly what we're inferring or expecting.
Well, it does. Optimus does. The rate of progress with Optimus just seems to be a little like magic, to be honest. Just before we go, one very quick question before we get on to the post from Millard and Ashish. Scott, so we've talked about teleoperation, then you've got motion capture, and now learning from videos. How much of a leap is this in terms of the learning curve?
Oh, that's you start to go up, because you can only get so much from the motion capture. Again, it's not very scalable. And what you would like to be able to do is gather, you know, all the data that may already be out on the internet. So there could be a lot. But the other is that you'll be able to create a lot more data and curate it a lot quicker. So, you know, the advantage that FSD had is, like, there's so many cars just driving out there that you're able to get the data, you know, and just imagine that all you have to do is get someone, you know, a pair of sunglasses, and then just start capturing the data, and then create this huge archive. And I'm sure there'll be like almost like a cottage industry. People will be paid, you know, a little bit of money just to generate these things. The more and more that it kind of comes in there. So that's going to be very good, because it will then be incredibly scalable. And once you get that mountain of data that you're able to go through to really start teaching these skills.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. It just got me thinking, because you know, every time I want my cook to you know, learn a new recipe, I share a video from YouTube, and one of the problems is the language. So you know, I'm just thinking, just, you know, if I had an Optimus instead, and I just shared this video, irrespective of the language, the fact that Optimus would be so advanced at learning it. It would just be in a snap,
But the other thing is that, the point that you're talking about there, the only reason you can share the video with a cook is he already knows how to cook. And so this is just a new recipe. But if a child has no idea how to cook, has never done it before, and you show it, the child won't be able to do anything, and maybe pick up a few things. So that's this whole idea. You need to have a certain foundation, and then these videos actually start to become very instructive. And as a matter of fact, they don't have to get in a whole lot of detail. They just have to be more or less like eye-opening, like, oh, that's what it is. And the experience I had is like a good one is a few years ago, we had to change the battery in her Dodge Journey, and I sent my kids out to do it, and and they found out that they couldn't find the battery. I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. They knew how to pop the hood and all this other stuff, and they're old enough, they've sort of seen a battery being changed before, but the battery wasn't there. It was like, what? So we had to go to YouTube video to find out what was actually in the driver's engine wheel, which meant what you had to do is like actually remove the wheel. And so just when I saw that, I already knew what to do. It's like, oh, I've got to get the jack out. I've got to jack it up. I then have to go and like get the lug nuts, and I got to, but there's this one step. I'm not quite sure how to pop out the wheel well. And those going to have some weird nuts in there. And sure enough, it told me, be careful on those things, because if you don't do it right, you're going to break them and you're never going to find the replacement. And then but it's because I had enough background and changed enough normal batteries on these others. But for my kids, it was like, we had never changed the wheel before because we'd never had a flat tire. So for them, that was like completely out of their scope. And that's what has to happen with these things, is that for them to become useful, you need to already have enough experience that it's just closing a small gap.
And it's probably
some
not
sort of
just
reference point.
Simple step as well. I mean, I could watch I don't know, surgical video of brain surgery, and I wouldn't be as comfortable with doing that just from watching the video as I would like a hand surgical movie. If I see someone do a new technique, and okay, I know the tissues and I know the structures at the back of my hand. But going into a new field, I still think you need to kind of build up that basic. So
now imagine Royden and me seeing that same video. We would be completely lost and be like,
what's all this blood?
It's like, I think we know what a scalpel is, but that's about it. And suction. We know what suction is because we hear that in all the movies.
And all the dentists.
The only thing that doesn't suck in this theater is the suction. That's the classic.
Okay, so let's get on to some of these really fascinating posts from Milan and Ashish and a few others. So this is first. He posted saying, one of our goals is to have Optimus learn straight from internet videos of humans doing tasks. Those are often third-person views captured by random cameras, etc. We recently had a significant breakthrough along that journey and can now transfer a big chunk of the learning directly from human videos to the bot's first-person views. For now, this allows us to bootstrap new tasks much faster compared to teleoperated bot data alone. Heavier operationally, though. And then he goes on to say many new skills are emerging through this process and are called for via natural language, voice/text.
Okay, so it looks like they're probably using voice.
Network. Yeah, that is what stood out for me as well on the bot multitasking. And next is that they expand to third-person video transfer, aka random internet. Kind of feel as if they're doing a bit of this already. And then he goes on to say, and push reliability via self-play RL in the real and / or synthetic sim / world models. Your takeaway.
No, so they're actually thinking about this, of course they are. I mean, they've probably been playing around with for a while, seeing how far they can go with. But I will be interesting to see what or for me to understand, are they like mapping like these hand tracking models where you mark out the joints and pins in between and transfer that to a 3D model for the robot to kind of mimic, or are they simply doing a kind of watching it and trying to figure out what would the appropriate motion be from a diffusion model based approach? Because I mean, like one-to-one tracking with a hand tracker is probably quite easy, but that it wouldn't work if the video is picking up a tennis ball and you're gonna pick up I don't know, a slightly larger ball. If you do one-to-one tracking, you won't pick the ball up correctly. So it would rather be this looking at multiple balls being picked up and understanding there are multiple ways of gripping it and adapting the size of your hand.
That's what's going to be tricky, is figuring out what that mapping is. And as we see, these are the first steps that you have to at least be able to get to that level before you can get to that next level. And then that's what they're going to be trying to figure out, is that in many cases, they're hoping the bot is really good at doing certain tasks like grasping a ball. Okay. So when you see it in the video, it's not a question of like imitate exactly what's going on in the video. Just at this point, you need to grab the ball. And with that, we want to show you something else. So those basic skills, you need to make sure is already there before you kind of go to that next third person. And again, I think this is completely congruent with, the statements that were kind of made, that, that's aspirational, or where they want to go. The whole team is saying that. And what this video is showing is that that's the very first building block in there. So it is a breakthrough of sorts. It's not the big breakthrough that everyone's expecting, and to make sure everyone doesn't think that they're both the same thing. And again, this is not just something that Tesla wants to do. This is something that they all want to do. And again, this post here from Ashish kind of confirms that's what they're doing from about a month ago.
Oh, this is the one from about a month ago.
Yep.
Yeah, and then where he says learned with RL. Hang on. Learned with RL in sim, deployed zero shot to rail. We are planning to extend our RL sim training to manipulation in the coming months with 22 DOF hands. Initial results will produce dexterous robot specialists.
Right, and then the next sentence.
This is his post.
Well, actually, the third sentence that was there was the money.
It says, my team,
the money quote.
My team is also building a generalized robot policy by leveraging robot and generic internet video.
Yes, exactly. So that's what they're building.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And of course, this is his post from a few hours back. He says all tasks are from the same neural net that understands text instructions. Now, this is also interesting. So it's not just voice; it's multimodal for the moment.
Yes. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that they talk about it's the same neural net is doing the commands. The LLM is on there, but there wasn't a mention of Grok. So I don't know if it's Grok. I think it might be their own LLM that they've built for this purpose. And it could just be that they don't need something as extensive as Grok, and that would take up too much. You need to have something that's sort of optimized for these tasks, so that they probably had to boil it down.
I would imagine that some version of the FSD AI stack would transfer better to Optimus because of the visual learning modality first, wouldn't it, rather than Grok?
Exactly. So this, I assume there's some voice. They kind of mentioned there's some voice, but I think they're probably primarily text-based. And what will probably be happening is the voice is just getting converted to text, and the text is what's creating the commands. And they need an LLM to be able to parse that as naturally as possible. And the question is how much contextual information need to be in there, which means like cultural references. So if you have access to the whole internet, maybe you can be running a really large LLM that will get all of your, Star Wars references, as opposed to like if you just keep it to very basic things. And like if you mean the color red, just say red and don't tell me, Darth Vader's lightsaber.
The red cylinder.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Let's then. So this is Ashish, and this is, of course, Scott. You posted this a while back. Now, this is something interesting that was spotted by.
Well, not a while back. This is just a few hours ago.
A few hours back, yes.
A few hours ago. So the
the rate at which we're moving.
Yeah.
A few hours ago seems like a while back.
Well, the obvious thing is, this was like a menagerie of Optimi out there that, everyone was seeing from different points of view. And I was thinking, it's like, I've got to go through, because usually there's like an Easter egg somewhere in there, or there's another one hanging around in the background. And I hadn't had the time. And suddenly, fortunately, a follower out there, Daily Digital Digest, he spotted that. And he sort of showed me that there's at least two different locations where you can see there are some that are outfitted with a 22 DOF hands, even though all the manual tasks that we're seeing are being done with the 11 DOF hand. There are a couple that are fitted with it, and they're not actually the one that's on the pilot line either. So the pilot line ones look a little bit different. So this is really a Frankenbot where all they did is they removed the forearm and put that in there. And they're just hanging around the back. We're not seeing them doing anything yet. But, you know, it's just kind of a curiosity that they're there. The main thing is, like, I think there's more than one bot out there that's got that. So there's at least two, and it's both the left hand and a right hand, because we only ever saw the left hand. So it's like, oh, they got both of them on there. So they're getting ready for that.
And if this guest, I don't remember if it was the Secretary of Transportation or whatever, who went down to Giga Texas, they had two of the Gen 3 hands on the table, one with a glove and one just sprayed in metallic paint, I guess. And they did the similar motions at the AI Day, whatever they call it.
And we can see it's far more compact, because the one that was at the We Robot event, that hand seemed huge, you know, and, you know, they really slimmed it down. So that was like an early prototype. I'm really surprised that they have something like that on display at Giga Texas.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What, you know, was it just flown in for him, or is it anyone that visits it gets to see that hand? And like, wow, they have that many in production, or is it still kind of a very early rough prototype they have, but it still looked very slim, especially with the glove on it. When you put the glove on it, you would think it's actually a human hand.
Yeah. But as Tesla is wont to do, they love to leave their little Easter eggs around. So I definitely think this was a conscious decision somewhere.
There's another Easter egg in there that I'd like to talk about, and that a variety of the tasks that were there seemed to be almost household tasks that a lot of people kind of mentioned. There wasn't really anything showing factory automation except one.
Yeah,
there was one, and I think I grabbed a picture of that. And that's a frame where Optimus is being asked to pick up, I think, an X crossbeam or strut or something like that. Yes, pick up the Model X forelink from the right car. Yes, exactly. So it's right there, and I think one of and the Optimus straight back there is also the other one that has the 22 DOF hands. So that there's like two Easter eggs, but it's always been my theory that the best place to deploy Optimus in the factory in Fremont is on the X and S line for a couple reasons. One, those are heavily manual because they don't have the giga casting, so they have way more spot welding going on and way more cells that need to be loaded with sheet metal and everything else. The other thing is that they're only running maybe one shift on a 5-day schedule. It's not like the others that are basically full of capacity. So it's not like you're really going to hurt the production rate if you do it like second shift or kind of put it on in there. And so that would be the ideal place, because there's way more low hanging fruit and you don't have the pressure of like, oh, you're screwing up production. And then the third reason I think is that, you know, the sales for X and S are kind of going down a little bit. They're not as popular as some of the other models, maybe because they're a bit old. But but you remember, a lot of people were buying the X and S because they could get it with like a plaid badge. Now imagine if the badge says "Body by Optimus."
First 100 by Optimus.
Yes, exactly. So body by Optimus, and then a lot of people will say, "I'm going out and buying that." That's the first one that was built with it, especially if they can document that it's not like one process, but you've got a lot of processes that are going on there, and it clearly was that, you know, the body was for the most part put together with the help of Optimus.
And you get the bot in the trunk when you buy the car, the one who built it. That would be interesting at some point. And then I think Elon had.
If you're ever stuck with a busted tire, just let Optimus out of the booth and let him have it.
Now there was one other thing that Elon said that you know, when I first heard it, it seemed like he was you know, maybe scaling back that, but I guess it was more or less, it was the question from David Farber that, you know, that you expect that you do a million Optimi by 2030.
But
and for a lot of people, that seemed like,
thought he was sandbagging with that number when he said it.
And I think it could potentially be sandbagging, but it's a realistic number. And we can break it down and look at it, because I had maybe like a more aggressive model that I thought they could get it as early as 2028. But this seems to be one that you look at it and you go, yeah, the scaling is going to be pretty easy. So here is if in 2023, they probably had about 10. order of 10, less than 100. So, we can round off like that. In 2024, that's last year, it's pretty clear they probably had about 100 out there. And this year, they want to have a run rate by the end of the year that might be close to 1,000 bots a month. Aspirational, they're saying it would be nice to hit that. Elon has said that possibly they hit 5,000, but let's just say, oh no, that's too aggressive. They should at least be able to do 2,000 this year. I don't think there'd be any problem.
Now, this is just clarify for our viewers: is this Gen 2 or Gen 2 Plus?
It'd be like the Gen 2 Plus. So it's what we saw on the pilot line picture. That's what they're probably getting ready to ramp up. And so 2,000 would be very easy. And we know that they've already talked to their sub-suppliers. There's plenty of documentation out there and everything else to try to ramp up that. By December, they need to be able to produce enough parts that Optimus can go on a run rate that would be somewhere between 10 and 30,000. I mean, some of the numbers that were there, production rate in a year. So let's say next year, there'll be about 12,000 because it was mentioned 1,000 a month. They'd be able to do that. Okay. Now, what's 10,000 bots a year look like? Well, if you break it down and just say, well, we're only working 50 weeks, we're only doing one shift, 5 days a week and stuff like that, that's 40 bots a day in one shift. Okay. And you divide that by 8 and it's like 5 an hour. It's like, that's ridiculous. And then if you want to double, 2 shifts, you can get that up there. So 40 bots a day is really easy to get to 10,000. Okay. Now, once you kind of get there, it's hard. You're not going to see scalings of like 10 and 20. So let's say they can scale up from there because I need to get to that million. Okay. So I was trying to figure out, well, it should be fairly easy at that point. Again, by adding up more shifts, you get a bit more efficiency. These things are coming with that. You could probably 6x that, or 5x it from there to get you to 60,000 by 2027. And then at that point, maybe you tail off to 332 and by 2030, you're at $1 million. So you look at that and you say, that's not going to be that hard. And if you look at things like the iPhone and the scaling on those things, they were also had this incredible ramp up right at the beginning, because first they had to get through the production issues, get that going. And once they had that kind of nailed, man, they just kind of were able to get up there very, very quickly. So it's fairly easy to produce 1 million of something. They're producing over 2 million, nearly 3 million full cars a year. Being able to do 1 million of these by 2030, it's achievable.
So
the question is whether it would be a
complex,
year or two earlier.
Which is more complex to manufacture, the robotaxi, the robocab, or the robot? Because I think there's a cadence of
they're getting close.
Every 5 seconds.
Oh yeah, and that's because they're getting rid of all the things that make it so hard to build a car. You're getting rid of the stamping line. You're getting rid of the paint job. Okay, nothing right there. They're simplifying the underbody. Saying basically,
but you can do a lot of that with the bot as well, can't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, the bots are designed for manufacture. The DFM is it's gospel in all engineering. It's like you just don't design something; you got to think about how to build it too. So the first couple Optimi were like trying to figure out what this thing needs to have, and then they start thinking, how do we scale it? So the one that we saw on the production line, that's set up to be produced at a high volume. The Gen 2 right now, it's more of hand built. And the next one is going to be more that they can scale to that. And then, there'll be bumps along the way, but as they go along, they'll figure out how to get the next generation to scale a little bit faster. So the question is, do we build 1 million of this Gen 2 Plus? No, we don't. We're going to, so it might be something that they ramp for a while, then suddenly, they don't have production for a little bit because they're retooling and they've got a new design that they want to push out. Yeah, it'll be something like that. So 1 million by 2023, I just wanted to sort of illustrate it. The numbers aren't insane. The path to getting there is fairly straightforward.
Yeah. But there's one mistake. It should be 1.1 million and 550,000 in 29. It's a number of legions, 5,000.
Oh, legions. Yeah. A number of legions or something like that. Yeah. Yep.
That's right. Yeah. Great. Wow.
Yeah,
okay. So,
and I've got an appointment.
I know you have to go
to in 2
let's
minutes.
Just wrap this up. Thank you very much, both Scott and Gustav. Our first live together. It's gone pretty well, I think. And then
I was well behaved. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Raiden. Bye, Gustav.